Hey guys, what's up? Today we are going to do something called a sit down video that I'm going to do on the channel where we kind of sit down and talk about fish and kind of like tips and tricks on fish. So, like molly breeding or something like that. But I'm just showing what I know to the people out there. So maybe I could help you guys and especially beginners because I always support them since I'm still kind of a beginner. I'm almost a year into fish keeping, about 6 to 8 months, so like halfway. And yeah, before we start the video, I hope you like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and comment down below what your favorite tip or trick was to keeping fish. And just to keep in mind, this is for beginners, and other people could watch this, such as people who are raising discus or flower horns or some sort of big fish, or they're breeding at like a business or something, like professionals. And I'm not much of a professional. I'm more of just like a hobbyist. Like I was just interested in fish keeping, and I decided to keep some. So today we're going to talk about like what I have tips and tricks for beginners. So let's get started. My first tip for those beginners out there is probably if you want your fish to be a little bit slower, a little bit more relaxed, maybe lower the temperature down to, like, I usually keep my tanks at 78 to 80 degrees normally. And for those beginner fish keepers who want either slower fish or just want their fish to be a little slower, um, I would recommend turning down your temperature maybe to like 76, something a little bit lower. I wouldn't go anything past 75 because it could harm the fish, but 75 and up. So like in between 75 and 80, not 80, 78 degrees would be recommended for people who want a bit slower fish. But if you want faster fish, like you want your fish to move faster around the tank, you want it to be more energetic, I would actually raise the temperature. It's like the opposite of cooling the tank down. And I would raise it in between somewhere like 84, 80, 82, somewhere like that. That's what I usually do. So like 78, 80, sometimes 82. And like the 55-gallon tank, I raise it up to 82 just to get the fish a little more active. What that does is the fish is trying to release that energy of the heat. So they're trying to release the energy from the heat, and if you cool it down, the reason why the fish goes slower is because it's trying to keep in that like heat, that energy that has. And yeah, if you want fish to either be slower or faster, you could use that tip. Another tip for beginners out there is you could like increase your pH or something like that. I'm not 100% sure of what that does, but maybe get your water tested for the pH, nitrates, and the water, like the oxygenated water. And what that'll do is tell you what type of, like, it. And see, this all depends on what fish you have. So if you have something like a Danio or some sort of like, I don't know, like fast moving fish, it might want a higher pH, although I'm not sure. If so, like, it's hard to explain. Like, if you're into pH, I'm not really a big fan of pH. That's why I'm kind of like, I don't know much about it, but I just know that the minimum pH is like, and there's like soft water, hard water, or like, and then like medium, and the medium's about like 7.0 for pH. And if you want softer water, I think you would actually probably get like crushed coral and put it in there, and then like put it in your tank, and it makes it the pH go down a little bit, which helps. And then driftwood can make the pH higher. So it all depends what you put in there and then what fish you have. Alright, now it's about food. Alright, so I'm kind of more into food and what you would feed your fish. For beginner fish keepers, I would actually recommend flakes or Tetramin flakes. Anything with the Tetra product, they're just really good quality, and it's easy. So like for pellets, yeah, it has more nutrition for your fish, and it gets kind of confusing for beginner fish keepers because like for me, I started off with flakes and only flakes. Well, I started off with like flakes and then wafers for the algae you use at the bottom. But what I would recommend for beginner fish keepers is starting off with some sort of flake and not pellets because they're sinking pellets, floating pellets, large, small, tiny. It might not be what you're looking for. So if you have bigger fish, I would actually recommend pellets. But if you have a smaller fish, so something like a swordtail mollies, guppies, platies, rasboras, tetras, anything like that, small fish, I would recommend flakes for just to feed them with. Alright, now this is a big subject, right? For beginner fish keepers, I would recommend bigger is better, but for most beginners, they start off with like a 5, 10, 20 gallon tank. Maybe nothing past like a 29 or 30 gallon tank because they're just starting out. I actually started with a 20 gallon tank, and which is my molly breeding tank now. And I I would recommend something that's small if you're keeping something like tetras or danios, rasboras, any sort of small fish. So like guppies. And I would stay away from fish that are either territorial, so rams or sevrons. And I would also stay away from any sort of cichlid, besides maybe angelfish, because any sort of cichlid is peaceful. So angelfish, um, there are a few more, but I'm not sure. But like as I was saying, angelfish are good. I would just recommend something for like angelfish, since they get about that big. So like they get big, but they don't get like massive. Like if I were to have a scale, I would put them on like a medium because they don't get big. They don't get like a foot long or anything like that, but they might get like 6 inches, 8 inches, somewhere around there. And then yet again, it's all about what fish you have. So it all depends of what type of fish you have. So if you have something like tetra, I would recommend something like a 15, 20 gallon tank if you have a lot of them. But if you're only keeping like 3 or 4, I would recommend something like a 10 gallon or like a 12 gallon tank, just so they have a little room to move. But maybe nothing smaller than a 5 gallon tank, because you really want to give them that like room to grow and stuff like that. But for bigger fish, such as angelfish, I wouldn't recommend starting with them, but maybe once you're 3 to 4 months into fish keeping and you like the tetras that you have, maybe get a bit of a bigger tank, and you don't have to take my information. This is just my experience with fish, how I dealt with it, and the things I'm telling you is how I succeeded with fish, like with fish keeping, and you get the gist of it. But yeah, for any bigger fish like sevrons, maybe even stuff like rams, and rams only get like 2 inches. I would put them in maybe a bit of a bigger tank. So any sort of fish that gets either big or territorial, put them in something at least a 40 gallon tank or at least a 55 gallon tank, which is what I have in my dining room. And it's what we have in there is a lot of I almost said discus. We don't have discus. We have a lot of angelfish. We have 4 angelfish, like 3 rams, and we've got like a sevron. We've got a common pleco. We've got 3 bristlenose, like 3 bristlenose plecos, and like I for those type of fish, I would recommend something bigger, like 55, like I said. And If you have fish that get absolutely massive, like giant gouramis, maybe baller sharks, you could keep baller sharks in a 55. It's just I wouldn't recommend it because they usually be in packs or groups of like 3 or 4, possibly. So I mean, they could be alone, but I would recommend like a bigger pack. And yeah, it depends on your fish. But for bigger fish like that, I would recommend a larger tank, like maybe 100 gallon, 120, 150. And once again, bigger is better. So if you have tetras, but you have a 55, you don't have to keep the tetras in like a 20 gallon tank. You don't have to. Like, I could keep tetras in 1,000 gallon tank, and they'll be in heaven. You know what I mean? They're just it's it's kind of hard to explain, but like once you understand it for yourself, you'll get what I mean. Now for decoration, and this one is kind of difficult, especially with me in my beginning stages, because you might want a certain type of gravel, and if you have like a family, you might want like a certain type of gravel or certain type of plant, and really for beginner fish keepers, I would recommend plastic plants, which is what I have. I have all plastic plants. I have no live plants unless it's something like algae or maybe yeah, algae, but I don't recommend live plants to any beginners, but if you're keeping something like snails or something like that, I would recommend maybe just a small bushy plant just so they can feed off it, or you could feed it algae wafers. It's just you might need to feed them stuff like that a little bit more frequently because they eat the algae around the tank, but they also eat off plants. They're kind of like caterpillars, I guess. That's the best way I could explain it. But yeah, I would recommend, and again, this is all your choice. I'm just giving you my success. I would recommend plastic plants for beginners, and especially if you have something small, like a 20 gallon tank or a 25, maybe like a 29, or even something like a 5 or a 15 gallon tank. Alright, now this is the last subject, and this is, what's it called? This is, it's kind of hard to explain, but this is the fish. It's, so like if you have a 20 gallon tank and you see a bala shark or a Sevron or some sort of pleco and you really want it, I would not recommend getting it. I would actually, and this is what I did, I would get some sort of fish that's small, and if you like, I kind of call it like this. You kind of go on like a shopping spree for fish, like buying fish. So, worst possible case scenario, you have like a 20 gallon tank or a 15 gallon tank, and you come home with like koi, some sort of discus angelfish, because one, they're not going to be able to fit in there, especially something like koi or something that gets long instead of like thicker. So like Sevrons, they get long. So like Sevrons get about a foot to 8 inches, but they get thick. That's the thing. If you have a thicker fish, so I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like I wouldn't get any sort of fish that's big. So Sevrons, cichlids, unless it's a small cichlid like a ram maybe, but I would only keep one of them because they get territorial, but only with each other. And yeah, I would just, it's all about water parameters and stuff like that. So I would just get fish that are small, and I would make a list on what you would want to get, and I would stick to that list even if you see a fish you might want. You could even check it on the list. You could always have exceptions. So if I'm going on a streak and buying, say, raspberries, or like harlequin raspberries or sissitail raspberries, I would maybe buy those, and if I see a pretty molly or a guppy, I would buy that. but then you wouldn't want to buy a fish like a koi or something without learning about it. And that's also a huge thing about fish keeping. You have to learn about the fish before you buy it. Because if I see something like a bala shark and say, oh, that's a pretty cool fish. If I buy that bala shark and it grows a foot long, I'm going to be like, oh no, where do I put this? You know what I mean? It's just, you're going to be all over, and then you're going to try to give it to somebody selling on Craigslist or eBay or something like that. And I just recommend sticking with a strict chart of what type of fish you want, or like what species of fish. So like, do you want small fish, big fish? Do you want something like cichlid or tetra? Maybe some sort of rasbora, danios, zebra danios, something like that. Mollies, you know what I mean. But yeah, that covers that list. Alright guys, you made it to the end of the video. Congratulations for making it to the end. This video is kind of long, it's about 16 minutes. So, I hope you guys like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And once again, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And let me know if you want more videos like this, some more like sit-down videos. And, yeah, I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one.